Hi everyone. It is Saturday night before the Chiefs take on the Houston Texans in the NFL playoffs. So I am having some folks over and going to smoke 6 slabs of ribs. And so I'm going to show you how to make some delicious, easy smoked ribs. I can't think of anything, any ribs that would be easier. And by far, these are the best ribs I've ever had. I can't take absolute credit for it. I got the recipe from a friend, but they are absolutely delicious. So let's get started. There's only a handful of things that you'll need. Ribs, obviously, heavy duty tin foil. You got some brown sugar, tub butter, mustard, honey, and Jack Stack rub, and of course barbecue sauce. So I get pretty much everything from Costco. These are some St. Louis style spare ribs. I'm gonna smoke 6 slabs. Difference between St. Louis style and regular spare ribs is St. Louis style, you cut off the top, the rib tips, and just as normal ribs that you would see in a barbecue restaurant. So I'm gonna go ahead and start preparing the ribs to let them marinate overnight. Do this and let them sit overnight. And the only thing that we'll need this evening is the rub and mustard. Everything else, the honey, butter, and brown sugar, is for tomorrow. All right, so the first thing I like to do is wash them off if there's any blood or anything. These look pretty good. So for the most part, with ribs, you don't have to trim off much. I will say, usually at the end, if you see it's pretty fatty, I would trim it off since it's not gonna necessarily melt away like sometimes it will if you're doing a pork butt or brisket. So I'm just gonna do 1 slab as an example. And like I mentioned, I got them at Costco. And Costco's pretty good at removing the silver skin. Now, if you get a whole spare rib, you'll sometimes need to remove this silver skin. It does look like I will have to do it with this slab. Sometimes, for whatever reason, it's removed. Other times it's not. Easiest way that I found, because it is a pain, just take a spoon, get up underneath it, and then pull it off. That was really easy. Usually it's not that easy. Then I also like to come in with a spoon and scrape off some of the additional fat. No one really likes with ribs biting into a whole bunch of fat. So that looks pretty good. And then lastly, I also like to put a couple of cuts in between the ribs. Now, if we were doing a competition, probably wouldn't do that. And also you'll see once I get done smoking them, they fall off the bone, which competition you don't necessarily want. So I'm gonna go ahead and show you how I prepare mine. Very simple. Just put some mustard on it, and I do both sides. And then rub, and I give a pretty generous dose of rub. Give it a nice bark. Same thing this side. Some more rub. And I'll go ahead and do the rest and then check back in once all of them are done. and we're ready to put them in the fridge. All right, so I have removed all the silver skin and trimmed all the fat. So now just prepping the rest of the ribs. And again, this is so easy, and I do highly recommend doing it overnight as opposed to just waiting until a little bit before you're about to smoke, just because it marinates them. And I've done both, and I just can taste a difference when I let them soak and rest, marinate overnight with the rub. So while I'm doing this, tomorrow the plan is Chiefs game starts at 2:05, I think. I'd like them done an hour or so before, and it takes, the smoking time is 5 hours. Now, by the time they're done, they are literally falling off the bone. So if you're not someone that likes them falling off the bone, you can definitely pull them early, 4 hours, but you can check throughout the process. So I will wake up around 7. I've got a Traeger. I want to get them on by 7 to give myself a cushion so that I'm done by 12:30 to 1 o'clock, because I pull them. I'll put them on at 7. I'll smoke them for 2 hours at 225. Pull them off, put the butter, honey, and brown sugar on, wrap them in foil, put them back on for another 2 hours, and then pull them, unwrap them, put them back on for an hour, 30 minutes to an hour, just to kind of harden them up. You can put some sauce on them if you like at that time. I don't, just because my wife had differing sauces that we like. So I leave the sauce off. All right, so once I'm done with this, I will wrap them up in the foil. I'll just use what I've got here underneath and put them in the fridge overnight. Take them out about 30 to 45 minutes before I'm ready to smoke, and then put them on the smoker. So I will check back with you guys in the morning. But the Traeger is smoking. Looking good. Oh yeah. So in a few minutes, once this goes down, I will, you can see it's cold outside. 30, that's hard to see. 31 degrees. Once this smoke clears, then I'll shut it, bump it up to 225. Once it gets there, I'll put the ribs on. And I've got 6 slabs on there in my Traeger. I think I need a bigger Traeger. I was able to do this last year, playoff time, but I'm gonna have to rearrange them every so often so that the meat cooks evenly, because as you can see, they're on top of it, and that is not ideal. You want to have them off one another so that they cook evenly. So I'll be coming out every 30 minutes or so to rearrange. We're ready to prep the butter, honey, and brown sugar mixture. I've already started over here since I've got 6 slabs. So each, I apologize, each foil, you'll want to do 3 big spoonfuls of butter. sprinkle some brown sugar and honey, and that should be good. Okay, so I have prepped all the foil. Again, roughly 3 big spoonfuls of margarine. I said butter earlier, but I use tub margarine. And then really I don't have any specific instructions on how much brown sugar and honey. I do about 3 to 4 spoonfuls of brown sugar, and then just as much honey as you want. It really can't go wrong. It's gonna make it really tasty. So I'm gonna go grab the ribs, put them meat face down, wrap them up, put them back on the smoker still at 225 for another 2 hours or hour and a half. Just depends on how they're doing. Once I put them on, I'm gonna let them smoke for another hour and a half, 2 hours, until you see the bone sticking out on the back side. That's when you know they're done. Just depends on your preference. A lot of my family and myself like the bones falling off, like the rib meat falling off the bone. However, if you're doing a competition style, that's not what you'd want. You'd want to bite into it and have it easily pull off, not falling off completely. So I'm gonna go ahead and pull them, put them in here, and I'll come back and show you what it looks like. One other FYI, my wife got me these gloves last year for Christmas. They are very helpful when pulling ribs, brisket, whatever, rib roast. They're nice, easily cleanable. I would highly recommend. You can find them pretty cheap. All right, so I pulled 3 slabs, and since I'm doing 6 slabs, it looked like 3 of the other 3 weren't completely ready to be wrapped and put back on yet, so having to adjust on the fly. I also think that I'm gonna put them in a foil pan and just stack them on top of one another, but you can see, look at that. That is buttery, sugary goodness that's going to sink into or absorb into the meat and form a nice crust. It's going to be good. This is nothing new. I think this is a pretty typical rib recipe, so you can probably find it out there, just butter, honey, and margarine. So I'm going to go ahead and wrap these, and once all of them are ready, I'll come back and show you what it looks like. I've got all 6 slabs wrapped and put in the smoker. Like I mentioned earlier, I kind of had to adjust on the fly just because the Traeger I've got doesn't hold 6 slabs. I can fit 3 in there comfortably, but 6 wasn't cooking and some of the ends were getting burnt. So just makeshifting this and putting it in there. Normally I would have all 3 just on the rack itself. Now, one thing to be sure about is keeping the meat side down so that the butter, honey, brown sugar mixture is not spilling out. If I were to flip it over, it would all pour out. You want it to bake in that mixture. That's what makes it so good. So we're gonna let this smoke for another hour and a half, 2 hours. I'll check on it in about an hour and a half, see how it's going, and then we will pull it, unwrap them, drain the juice, put them back on, unwrap to let them dry out a little bit, harden up, and then they'll be ready to eat. All right, so just pulled the ribs, had them on there, covered for about 2 hours. Next step is to dump all of the juice, the butter juice, and then I'm going to put them back on the smoker for another 30, 45 minutes. It just all depends on how much they cook. Now, if you look at this, when I was talking about how done, these are the bones sticking out. So that's pretty close. I mean, it's done, but now I want it to dry up. So I'm gonna take this off. I guess I have these gloves. Thank you, Nikki. I'm gonna take this off and put it back on. Again, it's getting kind of burnt because it's not on the center of the smoker. So I'm gonna go ahead and dump all this, put it on, and then I will check back in once I'm ready to put it on the smoker again. We've dumped out all the butter or margarine, brown sugar mixture, put them back in the smoker. So we're gonna put them back in for 30 to 45 minutes, maybe even an hour, just depends on your preference. So not too much longer and we get to taste these bad boys. Looks awesome. We've got the family here. The ribs are just recently pulled, cutting them off. So it's like too hot right now to eat, but nice smoke ring. Looks good. Woo! Looks really nice.
I like rubies.
Ribbies.
Ribbies.
Say, I like ribbies. Come here, Kara.